it was understand what was happening to the country. And what was happening to the country in 2012 or 13, let's go back 10 years, was we had a massive amount of imports coming into the United States.
Hmm.
And we had a lot of dumping taking place. Chinese steel was coming in not only in droves, but it was coming in so far below market prices that the domestic mills were struggling. And what we were doing at the time, again, talking about a lot of the why, not just what was happening, but why things were happening. We started to shift our focus and talk about what if, why and what if. And the what ifs were what if imports get cut off? What if something happens? And I can tell you that it wasn't too much longer, down the road from there, 3 years, that you saw all of a sudden trade cases coming out.
Greg Sheldon here, your host of Metal, Steel, Manufacturing, and Business Pro podcast, where you learn everything about the metals and manufacturing industry that make your modern day life possible.
Everybody, today we have a legend of the industry, Timothy Quinn, otherwise known as Tim. Tim has worked at Majestic, started out in kind of a different industry, and now he's with definitely an interesting venture and some other things too. So it's a pleasure to have you, Tim, on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
You're
Glad
welcome.
to be here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We were talking about Majestic before we started recording, and the last time, and what a place, right? And
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what. Yeah, if there's a way to cut your teeth into this industry and go through a baptism by fire, but yet have a massive amount of responsibility and trust put on you, I got to give the Majestic University a lot of credit, because you can learn a lot there. There's no doubt.
yeah, cool, man. And I mean, you were telling me last time we talked some of the cutting edge stuff they were doing, like back in, what is it, early 2000s or something?
Yeah.
Where they were putting computers on all the desks. And I mean, was that early 2000s?
Well, it was a little bit later than that. I mean, and it's funny to think about, we talk about all of the tech space and evolution of everything from communication, where we started with pagers and we moved to flip phones, and now we've got iPhones that run our whole lives. It was funny to see how that all escalated early on in my career in the steel world, because when I first got to my first service center that I worked with, which was Majestic Steel, there weren't computers on the desk. I mean, we had that big daytime calendar sitting there, a Rolodex. Although since I had come from a IBM 2-year background, I had a Palm Pilot, so that made me tech savvy. I was the big guy in the room, because I didn't need to rely on my Rolodex. But we had one computer in the sales office at that time, and we used that computer to look up inventory, because we were all just selling spot material. But fast forward from 97 to about 2010, the organization was very forward thinking, and not only invested in moving the offices from where the service center was located to a different location, but within the offices creating a lot of pretty cool technology. And that technology really focused on a mobile working environment. And I thought that was pretty cool to to be able to get up from my desk and walk into a conference room and be able to plug in, because Wi-Fi still wasn't that strong at the beginning. But you could either plug in and eventually use Wi-Fi to engage in different meetings and put things up on a big screen and talk about it. But some other things that they were doing too was also creating an environment that you wanted, and a workspace that you wanted to go to.
Yeah.
You wanted to show up because it looked like Google, or it looked like an Apple office space out in Silicon Valley. Yeah. And I think that was important to try and not just attract people and talent, but it was very forward thinking in trying to attract young talent.
Mm-hmm.
because as we look around in the steel world, it's getting much better right now. And man, I may be going down some crazy rabbit holes. And if you look in the back, the background, there's probably a lot of them in the woods behind me. Although you may think I'm in the scene of Game of Thrones.
Well, I was going to compliment you on it because it's quite beautiful in a unique way. I'm used to that background because I'm in the woods and there's snow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if you see any White Walkers back there, let me know. I'll tell.
Yeah, look out.
Oh yeah. But back to the workspace and everything, it was attracting young talent. And it was attracting young talent into an industry that even today, as we look around, steel is still primarily, it's run by baby boomers, even traditionalists, which is that generation that's one past baby boomers. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But they're retiring in droves right now. They're passing businesses along. And this industry is desperate for not just strong and good talent, but young talent. And we're seeing more of that. I think we do need to continue to diversify the workforce in the steel sector, not just by age, also, by gender and race too. But it's, it's something that is on the forefront of my mind, and I hope on the minds of a lot of people in the industry as we continue to, move forward.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting conversation I had yesterday with what are they called? Not millennial, but younger than that. What's that called? Gen Z or something like anyway.
iGen.
iGen, is that it?
I think it is, but you know what? I'm just a Gen Xer, so we kind of got lost in the fabric between the huge demographic of baby boomers and the huge millennials, and then there's us, 40 and 50 somethings that are like, hey, what about us, guys?
Yeah,
we just gotta bridge the gap between two generations that can't seem to get along.
Yeah.
And by the way, those in many cases, those are parents and children. So can we really blame anybody here?
Yeah, you're like the big brother, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, so she was saying that, because I was going off on my passionate tangent about, deglobalization and how, that can be beneficial, and, what is it that people are looking for of her generation. And, it was refreshing to hear that they're thinking locally and they really actually want to see the things they're making. And it's not all about fintech and all of these, buzzwords that float around. It's about actually making something. And so it was nice to hear that maybe there is a future, not that there isn't a future for their steel industry, but there is in their mind, right? That there's, maybe it's something they're going to go into. She was in manufacturing, actually. So yeah, man. So cool. So you're a progressive guy. You had a Palm Pilot before anybody. So why
with a stylus? Don't forget with a stylus.
Yeah.
I mean, I did fork out the extra $11 for the upgrade.
So what got you to be that way, sir?
Well, in 95, I actually started working for a IBM affiliate in Cleveland.
Yeah.
I'm born and raised Cleveland, Ohio. And I was working in a sales role there. But, it was the middle of the 90s, and the big issue that was lingering over actually the entire world was what's going to happen with Y2K. Is the world really going to end when we flip from 1999 to 2000? And did we really invest in all of this technology only to forget about one little digit? And it was the buzz was amazing. And what I was doing at the time was really hardware based, nothing like today with software. But we were selling machines that truly were mainframes. I mean, they're the size of a washing machine today. But I really did enjoy understanding a lot about tech and what was happening. Unfortunately, as a salesperson, I was also really motivated by younger companies that were really going to be committed and focused on growth. And A recruiter actually pulled me out of that IBM location and took me over to Majestic Steel.
Hmm.
And, when I got there, I walked in the building, and the first thing I thought was, this must certainly be all the steel that is used in the state of Ohio in one year, because I never knew anything about steel.
Right.
I walked into the service center, and I did not know what gauge meant. I did not know you judged the thickness of steel by something called a gauge, and
Yeah.
better yet, what a mic reading was.
Yeah.
But it was pretty mind blowing, and immediately, I was just intrigued by what was happening, and sooner or later, I decided to invest myself into the business and the understanding of just, not just the products and the grades and all the intricacies that go on with, physical and mechanical and chemical properties of steel, but I started to really understand and learn more about how the market works. I started to really notice early on, which still exists today, and I don't think it's ever going to go away, is volatility with steel pricing, and even supply and imports and all those other things. It's a constantly changing environment. And to me, it was very cool to have resources and people that I worked with that were also captivated by those same things, because it's not just a matter of what's happening in the market and what's happening with pricing and when things are predicted to happen, what trends are happening. It was really about understanding the why. I think, was it Simon Sinek that wrote It Starts With the Why?
Absolutely.
Great book.
Oh man.
And especially, not just for leaders of organizations, but I think it's also important as you're a salesperson, taking on a role where you're in an environment like steel that gets commoditized all the time. How do you present value? Your value can be presented by not just talking about what's happening in the market, but being able to explain to people why certain things are happening. And to me, again, as I was a salesperson in a commoditized industry, I had to figure out how to self-brand. And through that self-branding, what was I going to use as the platform? I wasn't blessed with handsome looks, so I decided I'd have to.
Come on.
Yeah, right. And I had to figure out something. So, it was like, well, for me, it was about relationships. It was about finding value in what the company offered, but then, self-branding and finding out, well, what can I bring to the table? And one of the things to bring there was market intel and an ability to not just translate a message to people that were customers or prospects, but also to be able to make sure that it was a clear message that was easily understood and consumed.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a confused buyer doesn't buy, and I've seen that a lot. So when it comes to a commodity business, I mean, it's so hard to be unique. Well, it's not that it's hard, it's just it seems to be not the common thing. So how do you add value in a place like Majestic to, that's talking in commodities all the time? Or how do you bring the value? And does that start with the why? Is that what you mean, Tim?
Yeah, I think a lot of it does. I mean, the first thing is, and it's funny, whether it's Majestic Steel or whether it's Lane Steel or whether it's Reliance Steel, anybody out there in the in the steel world has a challenge in front of them as they're going out to the market and trying to sell their product to a customer base.
Yeah.
Because, if we just focus just solely on the product, well, most of us, I mean, and now by force, because of all the consolidation that's happened within the steel mill sector, most of us are forced to buy from anywhere from 2 to 5 steel mills.
Yeah.
So if we are all buying from the same 2 to 5 steel mills and pretty close to a similar price range, and have somewhat, equal freight rates in and out, and processing equipment and labor that's all, almost standardized.
Yep.
How do you create that value? I mean, to me, you're going to do it through technology, and you're going to do it through information. And a lot of times those two things go hand in hand. And, and I think that the industry is a little slower to adapt and to adjust. I tell people all the time right now, I said, in what we're doing, like at EOXS, what we're trying to do and what tech is doing. And there's other companies out there that are trying to, the steel marketplaces that are trying to be created. I understand, and I love what everybody's trying to pioneer right now. The problem is, we're in an industry where evolution is at war against a revolution, and the revolution is more like Revolutionary War era, holding on to old systems, techniques, the older way of doing things. And I get why people are resistant to change, because change is uncomfortable, but change is such a primary component of evolution and, and evolving.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm always trying to understand, why is it that these, not just these people, me, there's things that I don't want to change, but why do we not want to change? It's hard, it's uncomfortable, but somebody's going to do it. So do you want to be first or do you want to be last?
That's so true.
Right.
I mean, Greg, you're right, spot on. I would say that one of the primary reasons is it's fear.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that are thinking about, making major adjustments to the way that they've done something, especially today. I mean, the reason I say especially today is this industry has just come off of a 2 to 3 year boom where everybody made a lot of money, and they should have. And if they didn't, I really think they need to call me and talk about, what we can do from a consulting perspective,
absolutely,
and a technological perspective.
Yes.
Because there were a lot of layups, we'll just say. And, so right now you could look at it and say, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, but
it's short-sightedness.
It is. Yeah.
And, as I walk through this industry, and again, I've been in steel for 27 years. Yeah. I've been in a sales and purchasing and marketing capacity my entire time. And, all I can say is that, no matter where I've been and what I see, the pain points of this industry are all pretty similar. And when I say that they're all similar, whether or not it's number 1 or number 2 or number 3 on somebody's list, but aged or obsolete inventory is definitely one of the biggest albatross that hang around people's necks in the metals industry.
Yeah. And
a lot of that comes from what I would say is probably not in my book, number 2 that I've seen, but, and number 1 is a byproduct of this, but poor contract management.
Right.
And, if companies are not able to manage contracts and hold customers accountable for taking material, then they get left with material on the floor. And it's not always the customer's fault. I'm not sitting here to say, oh man, customers are at fault here. No, a lot of times they don't even know. They find out at the last week of a contract that they still have £1 million to take. And if the sales team or the company that holds that contract as the supplier isn't providing visibility day in and day out, or week in or week out, and providing reporting that shows, hey, we're 50% of this way through this contract, and you've taken 20% of the material, we got to catch up now. And do that early on in the contract. But on the same side, what if you're 50% of the way through the contract, but you've taken 90% of the material? Hey, let's be able to respond today and get more steel on order so that you don't run out. Reporting and transparency and visibility and communication between supplier and vendor isn't one-sided.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, it's there to help both sides,
Hmm.
through the entire process of, managing a contract.
Yeah. So what is the solution to that? I mean, and maybe the perfect one isn't available today, but I mean, if you had like um, a, like a magic wand or something or whatever, what would be the perfect solution? I've got some ideas, but I'm curious what yours are.
Well, those would be palm trees in the background and not dead oaks.
Fair enough. Fair
That,
enough.
that's step one.
But
Although I guess I could control that.
yeah,
Um,
you must
you
have
know,
some.
what's that?
You must have something, some ideas.
Yeah, I think that, again, transparency into your organization, whether it's real-time inventory,
Hmm.
whether it's having tools for forecasting and planning, whether it's understanding who your customers are, what their needs are. um, there's so much that goes into it. I think that even, and a lot of people have recognized this component of it. CRMs are important for business. You wouldn't
Yeah,
have such a move of so many different companies investing in that technology and in that space if it wasn't such an important tool for a company.
for sure, for sure. So I mean, and that's really a lot of. I mean, I want to hear about your process of like the beginnings of getting into sales, and then what you recognize that needs to be done, and like you have put together a process more or less, and I'm not looking for you to reveal that, but what have you learned along the way in increasing the sales of a company?
Well, I would say that the first component to all of this, and this is a personal approach that evolved from work collaborating and working with somebody, that I worked with in my past, is that we operated on a 3S system where we had structure, systems, and strategies.
Okay.
And the structure of the company, or even just the sales area, or whatever team you're working with, really started out with culture. And it was about not just saying that there's a culture or having a fancy logo,
Yeah.
but it was really about having something that kept everybody aligned, that we were working for or towards.
Yes.
Once you have that culture defined, it's always going to be, it's always evolving, it's always growing. There's no secret recipe to stir in culture with water, shake and drink, and hey, everybody's feeling good. uh, if so, I'll take two.
Yeah.
But you do have to make sure that everybody is on the same path.
Yeah.
Number two then is still sticking with the structure, is not just having an org chart defined, but filling that org chart with the right people.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then as you bring those people in, and I think this is where a lot of companies do, I think, skip over this step a little bit, is first give people a defined job description for starters.
Hmm.
Clearly give them roles and responsibilities that fall in line with that job description.
Hmm.
And then finally, hold people accountable to that. And I think that, sometimes that's where we don't do, the right thing is, you can't hold somebody accountable for something that you don't tell them that they should be doing. But
Yeah.
at the same time, if you are going through the right process of training and setting expectations and doing all of those right things to make sure they're prepared,
Hmm.
if you prepare them properly, there's nothing wrong with holding people accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. So is there a lot of training happening like in the company you're with now, or I mean in Majestic, was there sales training, or like is there anything specific on the training that isn't happening and that could happen?
Well, I do think it depends on the role, that you're in. But, for instance, if we just stick with steel, I sometimes, even though what we're doing is talking about the metals industry, I throw steel out because it's my background.
Yeah.
But stick with steel. I mean, number one is, get comfortable with understanding that, how big this industry is.
Oh, it's crazy big.
It is
Yeah.
crazy.
260 billion about. I
Isn't that
mean,
amazing?
that's just wholesale and distribution. So then
Right.
you've got you've got metal product manufacturing, you've got recycling, you've got engineering. It all adds up to about $1 trillion around there somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And and I think that, that should get people excited.
Yes.
Because I do find sometimes people feel like they ended up in steel.
Yeah, what's with that? It's like, yeah, man. Why isn't there oh man, there should
Oh
be a
man,
class.
you're gonna make me go down another rabbit hole here. But
Let's do it.
yeah, let's do it, because one of the biggest issues that I've had with the industry is we don't create enough awareness of how kick-ass this industry really
Thank
is.
you for that. Yes, it is
Right?
kick-ass. Everybody's the shit. We're all cool. And
Yes, we are.
and we tell you how it is. That's the nice part about it. There's no bullshit. You know what I mean?
No, there's not, and there's a trillion. I mean, there's so many good people in this industry. I
So
mean,
good.
that's one of the things I love the most, is that there is every single person exists out there, from every type of culture and every type of area, and
Yeah,
every background that they grew up in. You meet all kinds. But think about it. I grew up, and if I turned the TV on, I sure as heck knew who General Motors was, and I knew that milk did a body good, or got milk, or I knew beef was what's for dinner and pork was the other white meat.
yeah,
I didn't know any of those brands, for some of those later products that I just named. But I always knew that there were these industries that were working together to help, promote themselves, or actually they weren't promoting themselves as businesses, they were promoting the industry as a whole.
yeah.
And when was the last time you've really seen steel do that on billboards, or in schools, or on television? Um, you go to industry publications, and sure,
Yeah,
you'll
yeah,
see something out there. Nucor, will have something in the back of a page, or Steel Dynamics, U.S. Steel, Cleveland Cliffs.
yeah.
Yeah, but let's talk about it a little bit, and let's get people excited about it.
I agree.
Because it is about awareness, and it is about understanding that this isn't a resting spot that you settled for. This should be a destination.
Yeah, I agree. And the more we can talk about that, I think that's all we got to do is educate people how cool it is, and then keep innovating, because that draws people into, okay, this is progressive. It's not just an old industry that doesn't change their ways. Oh, they're looking to be progressive. And I would be the first to put billboards up and had TV commercials. Maybe YouTube would probably make more sense this day and age, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
I'd be that guy. With your help, hopefully. I
Count me in.
Yeah, I don't know why it looks. I don't even think it looks people look down on it. I think they just it's so pivotal to the backbone of our culture in everything. Like I couldn't talk on a phone today if it wasn't for metal. You
Right.
know, even if the phone was made out of all plastic, that signal has to get from me to the person across the world. And in between all that is metals. So
Right.
so there you go, everybody. That's your connection to your daily life. So
Hey, it started with the Industrial Revolution.
that's right.
Those rail cars, and those trains, and those tracks, and those
Yeah.
spikes, and everything that, that Carnegie put together.
Oh
Uh,
man.
you know, it's still around today. It's just things have evolved differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I do that all the time too, Greg. I'd love to tell people, look around. And the office building that I'm working in right now, exposed ceilings. And the first thing you see is the nice spiral and rectangular ductwork. And then you see the steel decking. And then you see all the tubing that's holding sprinklers, or that's holding the conduit for the electrical system.
Yeah.
You could point to the dividers and the cubicles and the partitions and
Yeah.
sound barriers, and talk about the steel that's behind there, or the studs that are behind the wall, the handles on the
Yeah.
you name it. Even that, there's steel inside these computers.
I know, man. I know. It's everywhere. It's
It is.
crazy.
It is everywhere, and it's just. But again, it comes back to that awareness factor.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So how do we make it more exciting?
To me, it seems like people love technology nowadays.
Yeah.
They love, well, I would say the two things that we're selling the most is technology and
Fintech.
and short attention span.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, TikTok.
I mean, it is funny though, because I think everybody right now is trying to find a way to drive audiences to some platform, whether it is trying to sell steel or trying to sell a TikTok video.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever people are doing in that mission to market product, goods, service, brand, they're having to get creative. And I think that the steel industry is in that, is facing some of those challenges right now. Is how do we get creative in creating that awareness?
Mm-hmm.
How do we have more influencers out there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's going to take a combination of a lot of things.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And right now, with what we're doing at EOXS, is we are trying to look at a combination of tradition in the past, and then look forward into the future and figure out, okay, how do we bridge gaps without causing too much tension?
Mm-hmm.
How do we create something that still cherishes and embraces history, but also gets us thinking differently, so that not just so that we can get by and excel today, but so that it puts us in a position to be prepared for when things really do change, down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to relate that right now to thinking, steel 10 years ago. One of the things that we were talking about when I was in the service center world, I mean, I'm still in the service center world, but it was understand what was happening to the country. And what was happening to the country in 2012 or 13, let's go back 10 years, was we had a massive amount of imports coming into the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a lot of dumping taking place. Chinese steel was coming in not only in droves, but it was coming in so far below market prices that the domestic mills were struggling. And what we were doing at the time, again, talking about a lot of the why, not just what was happening, but why things were happening. We started to shift our focus and talk about why and what if. And the what ifs were, what if imports get cut off? What if something happens? And I can tell you that it wasn't too much longer, down the road from there, 3 years, that you saw all of a sudden trade cases coming out. There was a first wave of trade cases that were filed against flat rolled steel products. And they put duties or tariffs on material from select countries for select products like hot rolled, cold rolled, and galvanized.
Mm-hmm.
It changed the scope of supply chains. It disrupted companies. But if they weren't thinking about it 3 years earlier, all of a sudden they sat there and said, uh-oh. And then 2 short years later, Section 232 was released.
Mhm.
And then it was like, wow, the whole world was just put in time.
Yeah.
At first, we put countries that were, that were proven to be either, either anti-dumping or countervailing duties were filed against them. But when Section 232 came out, no country at the time was exempt initially. And all of that was known 5, 6, 7, 8 years before, but nobody wanted to talk about it because it didn't really impact them.
Mm-hmm.
You could be an all domestic buyer in 2010, and if you sat back and said, well, this isn't going to impact me, I don't buy any foreign. Bullshit. It impacted everyone once those trade cases were announced, once duties were announced. I mean, it will impact everyone. And I think that as we look at where we are today, and people say, well, I don't want to, I don't need to, or I don't want to invest in better technology for my company, I think that's very short-sighted. Because sooner or later, especially companies that are trying to grow and companies that are trying to grow their workforce, because people don't want to work off spreadsheets. And this is nothing against QuickBooks, but $250 million companies shouldn't be using and integrating Excel and QuickBooks to run their organizations.
No, absolutely not.
Some DOS-based system that has no power behind it and no ability to provide real-time reporting, visibility, and just an understanding of what's happening at your company right now.
Yeah. I mean, just because FTX did it doesn't mean everybody else should do it.
Right.
No, QuickBooks is not for that. Absolutely. You need a more comprehensive program. So I was
thinking about your company as I was reading about it a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about what a cool concept you guys have. And I think that it is, especially as we have so many baby boomers in steel, and we have so many steel companies that don't necessarily have have succession plans in place.
That's right.
If somebody is going to, and I guess it doesn't matter either, if somebody's going to turn the keys over to a suitor, whether it's a private equity firm, a venture capitalist, or just another service center, maybe, or if they're going to turn it over to their son, daughter, or relative.
Yeah.
It's the keys. And what I started thinking about is, if my dad, God rest his soul, but he was a Corvette guy. If my dad one day was going to give me the keys to a 65 Stingray,
oh boy,
right? I would hope that it's not on cinder blocks with no paint.
Well,
yeah. I want the keys to a nice, nice, up to date, made hopefully as original as possible, with a pristine paint job, 6 coats of wax, and I fire that thing up and it rumbles and I rip ass down my block.
Well, that's what you hope for, right?
Right, but
that's not always.
I know. I am afraid that people are handing the keys over to, whether it's the next generation or whether it's to the student. But it's tough, and I think that they got to think about that.
There's a lot of factors there, right? I mean, there's if you're, I mean, I would imagine at 65, 70, 75 years old, that's not, you're not interested, and I get that. Like, you don't want to take it to the next level, so that's where you or I would come in, or whatever, right? But it's not always the case. It's dependent upon the scenario, but there is a lot of room for improvement, as there always is, and that can be exchanged for dollars, and that's ultimately what people want to do when they retire, is have that money to have the palm trees in the back, right? So but it's not always where I'm not always looking for that. I'm not always looking for the Corvette that's all polished up, and just, it could be, the guy's just, he's tired. I'm done. Here's the thing. Pay me what it's worth, and Okay, I will pay you for what it's worth. But getting to the understanding of what it's worth is the hardest part, right?
Yeah.
That is the biggest struggle. But that's okay. As long as it, and here's the thing is that I come from the industry. Like I know it. I know this
Yeah.
the metal, I know all the stuff, I know the people. Like I'm working on this one in um the Northeast US, and this guy has built a tremendous business and he walks the floor, right? He gets to know these people. And that's what I want to do. That's it. So that'll be the transition. It'll be like, okay, give me some time here, sir. And I want to walk the floors. I want to get to know the guys,
Yeah.
because it's important. I can talk the lingo. I can curse and swear. I can razz them, vice versa, right? Without any problem because I've been doing it all my life. So,
Uh,
um, that's what I bring to the table, but along with the team is a whole bunch of other things. But certainly we can get into that off the show,
right.
but glad to. But so I would love to talk about what you're doing with service centers, but so don't let me forget to go there. But I also want to talk about Eon. I can't pronunciate it.
EOXS.
EOXS. So
Yes.
tell us about EOXS if you could,
Okay.
please.
Sure. So EOXS is an end-to-end software platform. Primarily, it's an ERP. It does have what we label a bunch of modules bolted onto it, but it allows you to execute everything from the time you prospect a customer and enter them into your system to cold call them, to going ahead and then quoting them, to securing orders, to buying steel, processing steel. It'll handle the shipping components all the way through invoicing. Uh, there's HR modules tied to it.
Oh,
There's
well.
accounting and payroll. It's like nothing that the industry has really seen to this level.
Okay.
It's very robust, and one of the cool things that we're really trying to focus on right now is we understand that to be in this space and to be in the tech space specifically, you have to be reliable.
Absolutely.
You have to be quick in what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we've come to really realize that a lot of systems don't offer, and it's not just this industry, it's in general, is customization. And we can customize the system to allow people to run their business the way that they like to run their business. Because a lot of systems say, okay, here's our system, now conform your business to operate using this
QuickBooks as an example.
Right. Yeah, and we're not trying to tell, what we're trying to understand is how do you go about it? Now there's structure to it that's fixed. Don't get me wrong, but you have to have that structure that's
of course
fixed, right? If you don't, it's like saying, telling Buddy the Elf to make dinner tonight. we can't have candy canes and fruity pebble and chocolate milk. I mean, it just doesn't work. It's a great idea. Go ahead and do it, but diabetes by the time it's time for dessert.
It's not very sustainable.
Yeah,
so with that said, so the guy that built it, like,
yes,
he knows what's happening, right? Like
his name's Rajat Jain.
He's from the industry.
Yeah, he is from the industry. He's spent more than 10 years working from inside sales to outside sales to purchasing to even in IT, in this inside steel. But I think and I met Raj years ago, just in passing through some conversation. But he's very passionate about solving a lot of the real hardcore pain points and challenges that service centers face, and distributors. And I think one of the coolest things that he does and that we're trying to push is that we're not trying to complicate things.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
No, and we're not trying to go in and tell people how to run their businesses either.
No, that's right.
Yeah, we are investing time into listening and learning. And if we listen enough, as we have, because this platform really began 3 years ago, or the project began 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We are just, we are getting to the point where, customers are now using it live in their day-to-day businesses. And there's no doubt. I mean, I won't name names, but I've worked with the top three ERP systems for the steel industry.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing bad to say about, what they do. It's just different.
That's right.
Our systems, it's much more advanced, much more customizable, more user friendly. And we're just scratching the surface. I mean, within the next 30 to 90 days, we're going to be launching something that is going to blow people's minds.
I can't wait. That's awesome.
I know. I mean, I can't either, and I can't tell you.
I know. Damn it.
but I promise you, I mean, it's us following the trend that is taking place, not just in tech, but in the world overall.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to be nimble. We need to be able to respond and react, and we need to be swift in how we do that.
Yeah.
And some of the coolest things that we have is, and I tested Raj on this a year ago, because I had moved, my prior service center that I worked with the last 5 years, I had transitioned them from one ERP system that was very old, more than 25 years old, to a more modern system. And I saw what a lot of the challenges were, which are understood. I would never expect an implementation to go, perfectly smooth, right? I mean, I expect to be able to walk into the DMV and get my driver's license in 5 minutes more than I would expect that. And that's not happening. Right?
That's not going to happen. No.
So let's check our expectations at the door and understand what's real, and call real. But I will tell you, and going through it, and I've been through 4 system implementations through my career, and they're tough. But if there's a plan and there's a lot of the right documentation and training and people vested into helping during that transition, man, it goes a lot more smoothly.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is that, we are very quick and very, very nimble in our ability to do that. And I tested Raj, and I gave him a project that he asked me point blank. We were working with another CRM, and I had asked this other CRM at the time, and I was just testing Raj on the CRM module. And I said, let me give you a project, and I'm going to put you up against the current supplier that I have. And I want to see how quickly you can respond. I never got to see how long it took the other, the incumbent CRM supplier to finish, because they had quoted me 4 to 6 weeks. And on between the third and fourth day, Raj had delivered me a full-blown system that was turnkey ready. And I was mesmerized at that, which is why I'm sitting where I'm sitting today, because I was thinking to myself, if they can do this on, this one little project that I somewhat, invented to just as a trial. Yeah. If he can come through on this with something that's not canned and packaged and prepared, and have all the reporting and documentation and systems aligned, and then allow me to test it to make sure it works. I was floored. And but I think that's where we're going anyway. I mean, whether it's EOXS,
it is, man.
The next brand down the road.
Well,
are heading down this path.
Like I said earlier on, if you don't do it, somebody's going to do it, and then you're going to be forced to do it. And there's going to be a new generation, which is me and a whole bunch of us, that we want to see these things. We want to interact differently. than what's been done before, right? So, and that's not going to happen right away, but it takes time, but that's progress. So
Indeed.
I agree. So I would love to see how it operates. If we could set that up at some point in time, I'd love to learn about it.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, we definitely will, because that's part of the hook too, is when you show somebody how this system works. And
yeah,
I I'm just going to just get into it, touch on it very lightly. But when I just show people the dashboard element of what our business, or what our system can do for their business, they're already blown away. Because and that's what people need. I mean, and that's what people want, quite honestly, is, if I ask you, can you tell me year-to-date sales that reported GPs of less than 6%? Our system can produce that information in 3 seconds.
oh my gosh, that's awesome.
If I ask most people in this industry to go do that, it
Yeah,
might take them a week.
yeah, give me a week. Yeah, I'll get you that in a week. Yeah, so if you got a board meeting in a day, you can produce everything you need, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
at the most. That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, yeah, I'd love to see a demo of that. So you're doing that, and then you're doing some stuff with service centers. What are you doing in that world, my friend?
I've been working as a sales consultant, for we'll say the short term, but it is anything based from working with sales teams and the leadership of those sales teams, to getting down to the nitty gritty and working with the troops on the ground. And
Yeah,
I'm not afraid to show people how to make cold calls.
yeah, yeah.
And I
Awesome.
don't think I should be. I mean, if
It's a big fear,
we
man.
talk,
It's a big fear for a lot of people.
it is, but we talk about leadership, and one of the things that people have to recognize is that people follow leaders more on what they see than what they hear from them.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's something that I don't treat or take that lightly. I do think that even if you look on my LinkedIn page, you'll see that I stress that I'm a hands-on leader. And I still enjoy playing the game, at every level. I love the business. I
mhm,
love the relationships within the business. I love talking about steel.
yeah,
Uh, I mean, and I love talking about the market. I mean, if you can't enjoy talking about something where prices go from 25 cents to 95 cents to 35 cents back to 65 cents in a 12-month stretch, and man,
yeah,
you you might need to think twice, because
yeah.
it's
It's
an
important.
amazing environment.
Yeah, it is. And it's important to know that stuff, and why going back to the why, it's important. It's important to understand why. I mean, I follow the world politics because it all has dependent upon, like, the steel prices all have factors based on what's happening in the world, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I wasn't going to go here, but I will. I'm curious, why did the pricing of steel go so high over the past 2 years? Not just recently, but a year ago and 2 years before that. What was the reasoning?
Um, lot of dynamics there.
Yeah.
Um, I think that early on, if we look back at the 2018, let's just say that's where we started to see some disruptions in the industry, with Section 232. Again, in 2016, we had trade cases. 232 came out in March of 2018, and all of a sudden, supply chains started to get disrupted.
Mhm.
It was really the beginning of it, and people were paying somewhat attention to it. But you know what? We always figure things out, because the world runs in perfect synchronization all the time, right?
Oh yeah.
So, thank you. But, all of a sudden we got hit in in March of 2020 in this country with COVID, and that immediately pushed a massive amount of the world ceased to operate for anywhere from 1 to 2 months.
Yeah.
And with that, came a lot of uncertainty. It put people in a frame of mind where they didn't understand what was really, happening or what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden, the light switch got turned back on, and the floodgates opened, and supply chains that we were so unsure of what would happen, we all expected, well, let's just get back to normal. Well, we couldn't get back to normal. And, we had an immediate rush for everybody to buy products in the steel industry. People were coming back and saying, okay, business is as usual. I've been out of the market for 2 months. I need to hurry up and stock my shelves. And everybody started stocking their shelves. But what we realized is no imports were coming in.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. roughly, produces about 90 million tons of steel a year, consumes about 115. So therefore, we rely on about 25 million tons of imports, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, there's no imports, and capacity levels were below 50%. So there was this huge demand for steel, and lead times kicked out, and all of a sudden, every business started to have back orders and backlogs, and that drove up. Started to drive prices for not just steel up, but inputs. And globally around the world, because there was a shortage of everything, or demand was so highly exceeding supply. Yeah, we watched a huge run up in everything. I mean, coking coal, iron ore, scrap, and then the byproduct of all of that, started driving steel up. And the mills were never able to catch up. The vessels weren't able to come over. I mean, even if you could get tons out of Europe or Asia or any offshore supply source, you couldn't get vessels to do it. And if you could, there was an increase for the cost of vessels. So overall costs of goods were going up. Input costs for steel, transportation costs for steel. And then in the US, what we dealt with was all of the consolidation that happened early on in the 2000s. We really felt the ramifications of that, because you had four suppliers running this whole industry in this entire country.
Yeah. So you had ArcelorMittal, Nucor, US Steel, and who was
Steel Dynamics.
Steel
SDI.
Dynamics. And then Cleveland Cliffs, they bought ArcelorMittal, correct?
Correct.
And are they continuing to buy Cleveland Cliffs? Like, are they continuing to buy other producers?
They're probably not done with their acquisition trail. Let's just say,
okay.
And their current CEO Lorenzo Goncalves, comes from he's been in every role throughout this industry. He's a great leader, in my opinion. Some will debate me on that, but I think he's done a fantastic job everywhere he's been. And he's now he's got his hands in he's vertically aligned throughout the entire supply chain right now. And it's just a matter of time before you see their presence more in mini mill production. I think the industry is moving that way anyway, because of a lot of the environmental issues and decarbonization. But I think that what we deal with today in an industry, and why a lot of the volatility is there, why the price run up, the price run up really, at the end of the day, the mills were all in tune doing it. Did input costs really go up that much that they could justify those increases? No. I mean, we saw the price of the price from scrap to hot rolled coil go well beyond $1,000 a ton. And it's traditionally $200 to $250 a ton.
Yeah.
So, we did see some run-ups that were, just, I guess you could say Mills being opportunistic at the time. They had a product that everybody needed. But, again, if you go back a couple of years prior to the pandemic, they build their companies and they build their production, and the capacity that they have based on the demand that they expect. And if all those tons were going offshore, and they planned on, the U.S. as a whole 90 million tons, well, then hey, that's what they're gonna produce. That's what they're gonna have. If you want to get in line and you weren't giving them any orders and they don't have room there, well, we'll put you in line, but you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah. So when you guys are buying from these suppliers, I mean, in most cases, it's about price, right? Is there any, like you personally, is there any other reason that you would choose one over the other?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, personally, I still think this industry is run strongly on relationship.
Of course.
Starters.
That's where I was going.
Yeah. I mean, the relationship that you have with your supplier shouldn't be something that you treat lightly.
That's right.
But at the same time, I think a lesson we did learn in the last couple of years is you have to diversify your supply chain. I mean, it's critical.
Sure.
As I was talking to sales teams in 2022, especially the last half when things started to correct. And when I say correct, steel availability was there, lead times were shorter, nobody was really on allocation. My thought was, as you try to enter into 2023 and or second half of 2022 at the time, you're going to have a buyer that has one of three mindsets, most likely. They're either going to say, man, I got through the last 2 years. It was a pain in the ass. I almost went nuts. I'm never going to let that happen again. So I've got to open up and expand my supply chain a little bit. Maybe I got to subscribe to the 80-20 rule. Maybe it's a 70-20-10 rule, whatever it was. But they had to think. They were either thinking that, or they were thinking, and I think that's about 40% of what people were thinking. I think 40% or 50% of the market was thinking, man, that was brutal. I'm never going to go through that again. I've got to reevaluate the entire thing. And I've got to think differently as I move forward. And then I think 10% of them said, wow, that was easy. I was aligned with the right person. That's a very small percentage.
Yeah.
And it may not even be 10. It may be 1.
Yeah.
It could just be being really nice to some people. But nonetheless, it was very challenging, and it was eye-opening to buyers, sellers, mills, service centers, OEMs. Nobody was exempt.
No, they weren't. No. I mean, even I would say personally, we all started to rethink our lives, not to get down that rabbit hole. I'm just saying that we all thought about things differently through COVID, because we just weren't sure. So yeah.
And I'll tell you, it was difficult. It was difficult to get through some situations with manufacturers last year because, for instance, take a lawnmower manufacturer. A lawnmower manufacturer could be, making the handles and making the frame and making everything in the US. But if they had a blade that wasn't manufactured here, and they were waiting on that, what good is that lawnmower without a blade?
It's no good. That's it. They're screwed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just how people were impacted, unfortunately. And you just said it. It forced us to think differently.
Well, and we're seeing that. And I, and this isn't a podcast about being afraid of other countries or being xenophobic, but it is about sustainability and thinking about, how can we not do this again? heaven forbid it happens again, think locally, right? How can we do all these things within our country, right? And I don't know where that leads to, and that's a big rabbit hole. If we're talking about rabbit holes, like you don't want to. That's nothing to do with any cultural problems or anything like that. That's just simply economics, right? So yeah. And it's exciting. It's exciting to me because a lot of the things that we used to make up North America have been lost to lower wages, and that's changing, which is exciting, I think.
Yeah. There's no doubt that that's changing, and I love the idea of reshoring. Not just from not just to bring jobs and bring that money back into each one of these economies for a lot of these cities that I travel to and have seen decimated by the exit. I mean, I go to Youngstown, Ohio. I go to Sedalia, Missouri. I go to Lorain, Ohio, and in areas of Detroit, and I see what was once just some great towns with nothing but dilapidated storefronts that are empty and unsafe. Roads that are everything's abandoned. I mean, it's sad to see that, and I would love to think that we can. We can try to find a way to reshore and to bring manufacturing and even more steel processing or production to the United States and Canada. But, one of the things is, man, I don't know anybody that can get enough workers right now. Who the hell's going to work? Which I think gets back to what we started off with, the awareness of we've got to get people to understand it's okay to work in a steel mill.
Yes.
It's okay to work in a service center plant. It's okay to work in a manufacturing facility that makes washers and dryers.
Yeah.
We've got to create the awareness that it is all right to not necessarily have to go to a standardized, what we call a standard university today, to go get a paper degree in business management
that there's no jobs for, and then you're 120 grand in debt, and et cetera, and and then you're enslaved to that for fucking, I don't know, long time. Right. So, I mean, you got to pick your battles. And I mean, I got young kids, right? I got a 5-year-old and a 1.5, 5.5, 1.5. No, 4.5, 1.5. And, I think by the time they're at that point, what's it going to be like? It's going to be so different than it is right now. But I hope that they just don't follow the status quo of, oh, yeah, I got to go to university or college or whatever. Of course, if you're going to be an engineer or a doctor or lawyer, yeah, okay. But just to get like a Bachelor of Arts or something,
right?
It's a lot of debt.
By the way, it cost me more money to get an HVAC guy to my house this weekend than it did to go see my doctor yesterday.
There you go. Yeah. So I've got an interesting contact for you when it comes to that people stuff. I don't know how far down into that you've gone in your business, but I know a woman. She is remarkable. Her name's Rhonda. Shout out to you, Rhonda, where she does a lot of this cool stuff with finding and keeping good people. So let's talk about that sometime. All right.
All right. I love it.
Cool, man. Okay. Anything else we got to cover?
I don't know. I think we hit on a lot. I'm not sure that that it was the straight path that we may have been trying to pave.
That's all good.
That's all right.
There is no straight path, my friend.
No.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. I thank you for your time. And where can people find you?
You can find me. I would say the best route, go to my LinkedIn page and search Timothy Quinn. And within there, all of my contact information is listed. So that'd be fantastic.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Greg.
All right. We'll be in touch.
We'll see you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Greg Sheldon here, your host of Metal, Steel, Manufacturing, and Business Pro podcast, where you learn everything about the metals and manufacturing industry that that make your modern day life possible.